your mother had any stories of when she was in college.
Well, she was waiting on the tables in the dining hall to pay her tuition through school. And so that was quite a challenge to keep up with the schoolwork and wait on the tables.
Did you have to work through college?
In a fashion. But I was in charge of the campus store. So.
How did you get yourself to Norway?
Saved money. Walked to and from work every day. Carried my lunch. Everything until I got enough, and then I applied for a scholarship, a tuition scholarship, which paid for my tuition there. And then I just got the scholarship was transportation over and back.
So what did your dad do? Your father, our grandfather.
A bookkeeper.
Yeah, our father was a bookkeeper. He had started working in the bank in Gastonia in about 1927 or maybe even before, and the bank failed, and so he moved to Winston-Salem, and he stayed, the whole family stayed with my grandfather, who had the farm there, for a short while, maybe 5 or 6 months. But one of my uncles was working at a lumber yard, and so he got my father a job as a bookkeeper at the lumber yard. And then he worked at the lumber yard for a number of years, and then eventually he did get a car, and he was able to drive to and from work in the car. But back then, in the 20s, you know, not everybody had a car. And you very often you were forced to ride with someone who had a car to go to work or ride the bus.
So, Mom, do you remember how when you got the car, you'd go out driving on adventures? Do you remember that?
Oh, yes, that was the big day. He had one afternoon a week off, and so he would bring the car home, and each of us could, for a short period of time, tell him where to turn. So we'd go down the road, and he would say, make a right, and then go a couple miles, make a left. And the whole object was to get him lost.
And you do that. Good.
Yeah, we did, usually.
So, and what about your mom? What did she do?
She was a school teacher. And she always acted like a school teacher. She never lost it.
So what was your mom's full name?
Nell Miller McLean.
And your dad's?
Alexander Milton McLean.
Neat. So the McLeans is that name?
Scottish.
What's the origins of the McLeans?
Yeah, it was the original McLeans came over from Scotland in the mid-1700s, and the story goes that the original McLean, the pioneer McLean, came over as an indentured servant, and he worked from the time he was about 10 or 11 until he was like 17 or 18 for a family in Philadelphia. And he fell in love with one of the daughters in this family. And so after 7 years, he had paid his passage, and he married this daughter, and then they started a family, and they had 2 daughters, and both of them died when they had a diphtheria epidemic in Philadelphia. So he decided to move away from the big city, and that's why he came to North Carolina. And he first settled up near Greensboro, and there's a town there called McLeansville, which is right outside of Greensboro. There might have been other McLeans that came in there, I don't know. But at any rate, he heard about a farm being available down near Charlotte, right on the Catawba River, where another river ran into the Catawba. It was called the Point because these two rivers converged at that point. And they had a farm there, and the original McLean had a number of sons, which lived to be adults, and one of the sons went back to Philadelphia, to the relatives in Philadelphia, and went to the only medical school in America, which was the Jefferson Medical School in Philadelphia. So he actually became a doctor by going to a medical school. Other doctors in North Carolina were just apprenticed, like a plumber's apprentice. You know, you tag along with a doctor for a year or two, and then you were a doctor. But at any rate, he came back, and then his brother became a doctor as well. And so we have a whole series of MDs that originated from that pioneer family. And eventually they bought up farms around there that extended into South Carolina, so that I think there were around 2,000 acres that were owned by the McLean family, members of the McLean family, and then so many of their descendants that stayed on these farms for a number of years. And my father's father, my grandfather, grew up on the farm, but he didn't like us living on the farm, and he decided to move to Gastonia, where the children could get jobs in the textile firm. And then it was thought a rather smart thing to do, to get jobs for all your children, and then you didn't have to work. Well, he was interested in writing interpretations of the Bible and things like that. So he stayed home, but he had 7 children that went to work in the mill every day. and they brought in enough money so that the family existed. And the child labor laws destroyed that whole system in the early 1900s. I don't know, when did the child labor laws come in? Judy knows this.
That was about that time.
Yeah, but Mom, you were real active involved in the child labor laws, in fact.
Yeah, I was,
Judy used to work for the Labor Department.
and my specialty
She
was
knows
child
those
labor
laws.
laws.
Any other questions? I'm about to wrap up.
Yeah.
Nope. Okay, great.
My father
Yeah.
went to Jefferson Medical.
Oh, yours did.
Yeah, so I didn't really, other than Ed just mentioning that, I didn't.
I think it was one of the first medical schools in America.
It was one of the first in the pre-medical school.
What's it called now, Marty?
Jefferson Medical.
It still is Jefferson
Yeah.
Medical School?
Was it affiliated
Yeah, it's one of the earliest,
The time they were supposed to come and eat it, ABJ's, he served the
Yeah.
crow,
That's
a
what they call
crow,
it.
one crow from the whole crowd.
Yeah, you know what's out there?
And they decided never to eat there again.
Yeah, really. He said that
And you know what they did?
they brought out this crow
No,
that was
he
cooked,
runs off.
but it was on a big platter. The crow's not that
Oh, and then he
large.
does where he like,
People looked at this and they said, "Now what is this that we're eating?" And he said, "Oh, it's a crow." He said, "The crow lighted on my back fence, and I put two rifles."
took him down.
But then he served it to all these people.
but then again, there's a guy.
Just one
He
crow.
died a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
Did he eating
crow.
Yeah.
It's not
It
a,
was
not a
in
good
the
thing.
90s.
Oh.